On this edition of Independent Sources, Silicon Diversity, why New York's booming tech sector may need a reboot, and Workers Unite, how raising the rate of unionization among black workers can narrow the racial pay gap. Those stories and more coming up on Independent Sources. Welcome to the new season of Independent Sources, bringing you news from New York's ethnic and immigrant communities. I'm Gary Pierre. New York City's tech sector is in the midst of a boom. The Silicon Alley was estimated to have generated about $125 billion in 2013. Employment in the sector is also growing at 18%. That's faster than the rates in the city and the country. But that success is not reaching communities of color. A recent report from the Center for an Urban Future showed that more than 60% of those employed in the sector are white. I sat down with one of the authors of the study, Adam Foreman, and Angie Kamath of Per Scholars New York, an organization that provides technology access and training to underserved communities. We talk about the diversity disparity in the sector and what can be done to address it. Adam, give us a sense of the scope of the tech industry in New York City.
Yeah, the tech sector in New York City is large and growing. Over the last decade, we've seen about a 71% increase in jobs in tech companies. So that doesn't even include programmers working at banks or non-tech industries. This is just in tech companies, a tremendous growth. The biggest growth is in publishing, internet publishing, like the Vices and the Gawkers and the BuzzFeeds of the world. Also online shopping, like Guild Group and Etsy. So across the spectrum, we're seeing a huge growth, and in every borough, too. So over 80% increase in Brooklyn, over 70% increase in Manhattan. Most of the jobs are still in Manhattan, but we're seeing real distribution across the 5 boroughs.
Okay. So in a city as diverse as New York, we pride ourselves of being the great mosaic. Everyone is here in large quantity. So why is that sector still 60-something% white and male?
Yeah, it's unfortunate. Right now, New York City is 67% is non-white. So as you said, this great mosaic, fantastic diversity in New York City, really pride ourselves on that. And yet the tech sector is 60% male, 62% white. So it really is not reflective of the city. And of course, you don't need a quota system where everything is exact, but it's such a large gap that we really need to be thinking about why is there this diversity gap and what can we do to reconcile it?
So Angie, let's answer that question. What can we do and what should we do about it?
Sure. So at Per Scholars, we have been kind of hacking away at this problem for 20 years. And so our mission is to really increase the diversity and get individuals who otherwise wouldn't have an opportunity to enter the IT field, to get them training and jobs so that they can get into the entry level and then work themselves up. And so what can we be doing as a city? I think the story of our students really kind of explains how we can be doing more to really help folks who have experience in non-tech jobs really transfer those skills into the tech field. Our training, and we've been doing it for 20 years, we've been evaluated and kind of nationally recognized that give us a 2, 3, 4 month period and we can train someone in the technical skills, but most importantly, give them those soft skills so that they can really interview, job search, learn how to get into that job, but then also advance over time. And I think that there need to be more programs like ours that really give access and opportunity to individuals who otherwise wouldn't have it.
Is the problem really training or lack of qualified people to work in the industry, or is it something much more systematic than that?
Mm-hmm. In the sense that really is about training. It starts at the grade school level, in terms of getting the necessary skills in order to work in these very high-skilled companies. So from K through 12 education to training programs like Per Scholars to Girls Who Code to Coalition for Queens. There's a lot of programs that are looking at this issue, and we really need to be putting a lot of resources into making sure that a diverse subset of the city has the skills that may allow them to thrive and succeed, get jobs in the tech sector.
What I'd also add is the field has been talking, I think, about diversity, thanks to Google, a lot in the past 2 years. And
How so?
I think by having companies show where they are in terms of diversity or where they are not in terms of diversity, it's really helpful to highlight the issues. And I know companies like Google and others have been really starting to think about their interview process, their screening process, what types of pipelines they use for talent, so that it's not always just about going to the top tier schools, but that tech firms in particular start to really represent the different user bases that they have, and kind of by looking at a diverse set of pipelines for your talent, you can start to really reflect the user bases. And I think kind of without fail, when companies start to have broader and more diverse workforces, however you define that, whether it's race or gender or socioeconomics or geographic diversity, diversity of perspective, diversity of training really matters, and it tends to make companies much more profitable. And so we're excited when companies like Google explain that, whether it's unconscious bias or hiring practices that tend to recruit like-minded and kind of folks that look alike into a field, and when we actually make a concerted effort to change that, it's really valuable. When someone like Google talks, others certainly follow, and we're really grateful for that exposure, and it gives us an opportunity to talk about what we do, where 90% of our students are individuals of color, 35% of our students are female, and we're really every year creating 500 in New York City, 500 and across the U.S., closer to 800 diverse, kind of non-traditional types of IT workers.
Good. So, Adam, tell us the genesis of this survey that you guys did, and give us some other highlights beside the racial disparity that you concluded.
Yeah. Actually, what kind of Angie mentioned is one of the things that really inspired it. We're seeing a lot of companies like Google, like Facebook, like Twitter, suddenly kind of sharing, revealing their data on the demographics of their employment. And we recognize there really is a deficit, a diversity deficit. And we want to see, in New York, a city that prides itself on its diversity, are we seeing the same type of disparities? So that was a really big part of what inspired it. Also, there's been several reports in the last 5 years on trying to get a sense of how big the tech sector is. And it's always up for grabs. What do you define as a tech company? What don't you? And there was something very recently by the Federal Reserve, the New York Federal Reserve.
And you use a lot of the data on this report, right?
Exactly. We basically use their definition of what they count as a tech sector, what counts as a tech company. So once we got the stamp of approval from a very official source, the New York Federal Reserve, we decided to run with those subsets of what counts as the tech sector and look at diversity, look at age. Another thing we found, you asked about other highlights, is about 44% of the tech workforce is under 35. So it's a really young workforce. Not surprisingly, these are very new economy skills, and they want younger people who are trained in these skills. But that's exciting too, that it's young people, because that means there really is an opportunity as they look to 18-year-olds, 21-year-olds, 25-year-olds. This is really the opportunity to seize. So we need to be training that next generation of young people, because it really can make a dent. It's not people who are going to be there. Well, at this point, I'm sure people will stay longer in their companies, but there really is an opportunity where you're looking for a young workforce to train younger workforce. And we're really encouraged by de Blasio administration's recent announcement.
Yes.
I'm sure you're going to bring that up on
well,
education.
You did. Thank you very much.
No problem at all. Happy to help out the lead. We're really encouraged by...
tell people what was the announcement.
As part of this really big reform agenda for Department of Education, for education in New York City, he promised to introduce within the next 10 years computer science training for all schools in New York City.
He earmarked $50 million or something for that. So
yeah, and it needs to be 10 years, because there's so much to do in terms of having the computer science, the teaching talent, and so many, thousands of schools in New York City, over 1 million students. So it's a really big lift to really change the curriculum like this, but this is what's necessary, I think, in order to diversify.
So Angie, that was the question that I had for you when you made your point, but what took city officials or leaders in the field to realize they have this problem? What took them so long?
Good question. I think that we were talking earlier, the tech field has, I think often we fall into this trap that we think about tech jobs and we think about
computers.
We think about software developers, folks wearing hoodies in front of their laptops with their earbuds on, just doing programming. And the wealth of opportunity, the types of occupations in tech is really, really diverse. And so we at Perscolas have been focusing on infrastructure jobs, so IT support, folks who run network data centers, folks who test software. These are great tech jobs, great entry levels that have, over time, career pathways, really pretty easy and very clear access to kind of middle income and probably upper income jobs. And so I think that we need to make sure that we are not just training for one thing in terms of software programmers or coders, but that we really are recognizing the wealth of opportunity. What could the city be doing more? If we're really excited by the Tech Talent Pipeline, they have a particular initiative called Beyond Coding that we think is really interesting, where you're taking individuals who actually have coding experience, but they find themselves unemployed, and you give them soft skills, so the skills to interview, to kind of job search, to really think about how you can land into a job, because something is separating this group of folks from kind of getting back into the workforce or kind of getting into the workforce. And so I think it's not just about technical training. Sometimes it's about technical training. It's about K through 12. It's around soft skills and kind of giving individuals access to networks and interviewing opportunities. I think all of these things are really important. Okay. One of our most recent projects has been actually working with the private sector to work with companies who are interested in reshoring IT jobs that are right now overseas. And so when you start to look at what individuals are making these days overseas in help desk jobs or software testing jobs, after being outsourced for 20 years, the average worker is earning $50,000, $55,000 overseas in Asia. And so we are part of a partnership with a company called Doran Jones, where they are reshoring a lot of these software testing jobs. I think the city or the state could kind of look at pilot projects like this, like what we're doing with Perscolis and Doran Jones, and seek to replicate that and scale that across lots of call center types of jobs or help desk support center types of jobs. I think that there is certainly the jobs that Adam wrote about in his report that exist here that are being created, but there's also a whole lot of IT jobs that are overseas that really could be brought back and really help boost the economy as well.
Adam, last question. What do you hope to achieve with this report? What do you want to see happening besides the obvious, get more diversity in this industry?
Yeah. I mean, I think right here is a really big part of what we wanted, to bring attention to this issue, to get coverage that becomes, it's spotlighted, and city officials and nonprofits realize that this is something that we need to be thinking about, that this is a really big growing sector of the city's economy. Lots of great high-paying jobs are in this sector. How do we make sure that everybody across the city, in every neighborhood, in every borough, gets access to those type of jobs?
Well, thank you very much, Adam Foreman, Angie Kamath. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Still to come on the show, the economic advantage of unionizing black workers. Before that, Abby Ishola has some other news.
Thanks, Gary. Here's a look at some headlines from New York's ethnic and community media. El Diario La Prensa reports that hate crime victims could turn their nightmare into legal immigration status. The U visa provides immigrants who've been victims of hate crimes legal status to live and work in the U.S. That, according to the Hellenic American Neighborhood Action Committee, or HANC. The organization provides counseling to victims of violent crimes, financial support to pay hospital debts, and assist them through the process of obtaining a U visa. Victims must comply with police to investigate the crime against them in order to be eligible for the visa. Young Haitian immigrants in New York City can smoothly adjust to life in America thanks to one organization. Flamboyant Haitian Literacy Project offers young Haitian immigrants assistance with enrollment into schools that cater to foreign language speakers. The organization also teaches participants English, provides leadership activities, and preparation for standardized tests. Flamboyant founder and director Darnell Benoit started the program in 2005 because she found that the information on school enrollment options was inadequate. She also said many young people from her homeland who moved to the States don't get this sort of support at home since their parents are also newcomers. One photographer is on a mission to capture New York City's disappearing street life. Natal San Miguel, a longtime street photographer, told DNAinfo.com that he's working to capture the interesting character of many New York City neighborhoods that seem to be disappearing due to gentrification. Those images are currently on display at Tribeca's Soho Photo Gallery. He is also presenting more of his work in an exhibit titled Street Life, a New York City Vanishing Act, which is on view through October 3rd at the 10 White Street Gallery. Also from DNAinfo.com, the very first New York City Film Festival about cannabis culture is coming to Williamsburg, Brooklyn. The website reports that the New York City Cannabis Film Festival will be held at the White Hotel in Williamsburg on September 26th. Organizers say the films are not about weed per se, but will appeal to marijuana enthusiasts. The festival's feature film, titled The Scientist, is a documentary about Raphael McCullum, an Israeli chemist who is known for his research on how cannabis interacts with the human body. Organizers say the film genres range from documentary, horror, comedy, and sci-fi. That's some of the other news this week. Back to Gary in the studio.
Thanks for staying tuned. A recent study by two CUNY professors, Ruth Milkman and Stephanie Luce, revealed that increasing the rate of unionization amongst black workers around the country helped narrow the racial pay divide. I sat down with one of the co-authors of the study, Stephanie Luce, to get some details about the report. Dr. Luce, talk to us a little bit about the state of the union today.
Sure. Yeah, the union movement is under attack. A lot of people have been, employers are attacking unions and trying to get rid of them, and politicians are also trying to get rid of them. But really, the union is one of the main ways that workers have any protection right now on their job. We could be fired because the employer doesn't like us. So unless you have a union contract, you're really vulnerable. So unions give us job security, they give us higher wages, and they give us a much greater likelihood that we'll have benefits like paid days off and pension and health care.
There's been talk, and I'm sure you've heard them as well, that with all the modernization in the workplace, with all the rules that the federal or local governments have put in place defending workers' rights, why our unions still matter, and also unions just are an impediment to growth and economic development, because you have all these people who are doing nothing but getting a fat paycheck.
Yeah, that is the rhetoric out there. But interestingly enough, even some of the conservative critics of unions now say they were wrong. They now realize that unless workers have higher wages, they will not have money to buy goods and services. So a higher wage also is job creation and generates the economy. It's also, everyone has the myth of the one lazy teacher or the one lazy worker that's holding everything back. But it's like our justice system. It's, innocent until proven guilty, and we'd rather protect the mass amount of innocent workers who work hard and do a great job, and maybe one lazy worker will get by. But that's true in the non-union world as well. You always have a lazy non-union worker as well.
Let's talk specifically about the role of Latinos in unions.
Yes.
Where are they now in terms of numbers and hierarchy and things like that?
Well, what's been interesting is that Latinos have been one of the fastest growth in terms of not growth rate, but the numbers of people joining unions. So the numbers of Latino workers in unions has about doubled in the last decade or so, particularly in certain places on the coast in California and New York. And we see among, here in New York, Puerto Rican workers in particular are one of the highest unionized ethnic groups. Over almost 50% of Puerto Rican workers belong to unions.
How many?
Almost 50%.
Oh, that's huge.
Yeah, so, and we see in general that for both Latino workers and African American workers, unions really reduce wage discrimination within the workplace. It's still that white workers make more than workers of color, but a union really reduces that gap. And for workers of color, the pay increase, for example, black workers who belong to unions get almost 60% higher wages than black workers not in unions in the U.S. It's a huge boost in pay for workers who experience a lot of discrimination in the non-union workplace.
And also with the decline of industry in this country, like the auto industry and all these other manufacturing industries, is that affecting blacks and Latino ranks and files within these unions?
Well, it definitely hurt a lot. Black workers in particular were hurt in the last recession. They were lost jobs at a much higher rate in the private sector. But what we're seeing is, there's increasingly the union movement is not that stereotypical manufacturing worker. It's really public sector workers, primarily in healthcare and in education. And many black workers, in particular African American workers in New York, are in the public sector. Almost 1 out of 4 black workers in New York are in the public sector, and these are highly unionized jobs. So, it's hard when the manufacturing economy is hit. Workers of color are hurt, but it's also hard when we have attacks on the public sector, when we cut public services, because that also hurts black workers as well.
And lately there's been a lot of movement to unionize the car wash company and the fast food industry.
Right.
Is that going, and is that likely to improve their lives?
Yeah, you're right. So a lot of the action around unionization right now is in the low-wage sector, and these are mostly a lot of immigrant workers, a lot of Black and Latino workers. And we're seeing that for a lot of people, they're just finding that the wage is not sustainable. You just can't make a life this way. So really unionization is one of the only ways we have to raise wages. You know, people try, we're trying to raise wages at the minimum wage and at the state and national, but a union contract also increases your hours and gives you job security and scheduling stability. So we're seeing actually what's interesting, the last 2 years in New York City and New York State, union density actually went up. It's reversed a long trend, and it's reversed a trend that's at the national level.
What's behind that trend?
Well, so it's partly, it seems, it's a revitalization of the economy in some sectors like the hotel industry, entertainment industry, some in construction. But it's early to tell, but it also may be that some of these efforts around the car wash workers, fast food, are starting to pay off, and workers are feeling a little more confident and demanding their rights to a union.
We don't have much time, but I'd like to talk about the leadership of the union.
Yes.
How diverse is it?
Yes, so unfortunately, while the union membership has really diversified, now white men are minority of union members. The leadership has been slower to change. That's probably not a surprise. But I will say we have some very excellent, dynamic leaders in New York City, in the New York City labor movement, women and people of color, African Americans and Latinos. And I think we're beginning to see that change, slowly at the national level too. But the future of the labor movement is in the hands of immigrant workers, minority workers, women.
That's always been the case, though.
Yes, it's true. It's true. It is. It's an immigrant rights movement, but it is. I think right now we're in a moment of do or die. The union movement's going to die if it doesn't adapt and work to change its dynamics, and if it's not organizing in these sectors where people of color work. So let's hope that means changes for the unions and union leadership as well.
Dr. Stephanie Luce, thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much. It's been a real pleasure.
When we come back, a playwrights festival to reinvigorate interest in African theater. Finally from us, a group of New York-based African writers, actors, and community activists have joined forces to present Now Africa, a playwrights festival to showcase dramatic works by writers from the continent. Their goal is to reintroduce legends such as Wole Soyinka and Tawfiq Al-Hakim. Abi Ishola sat down with the program's artistic director, Ngozi Anyau, and creator Mfoniso Udofia to find out what we can expect from the festival.
Mfoniso and Ngozi, thanks for being with us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so Mfoniso, how did the idea for Now Africa come about?
Well, I was actually sitting in a CUNY because I work at CUNY.
Really?
So I was sitting in a CUNY and we're looking at all of this space, and I was like, this is going to be great theatrical space. Can we use it? And I was also in the middle of a really heinous writer's block. And so I'm sitting at work, bad writer's block. I'm like, I'm going to pick up an African play and we're going to start playing around in free space. And then I realized I didn't know too many African plays.
Wow.
And so I started questioning how I could be an African playwright, a Nigerian playwright, and not know things beyond Wole Soyinka and Ngugi wa Thiong'o and some of like the really big names. And so I started researching, and that researching has manifested into what is now a full-blown festival.
Wow.
Researching, putting together a team, talking. It's been a lovely and intense process.
Wow. So, but speaking of Wole Soyinka, you're using his work and other legendary African...
Yes, we don't always know. So we have Bernard Binlin Dadier, who's from Côte d'Ivoire, and he's a satirist and I don't know that too many people would know who he is. We've got some phenomenal North African writers, and I'm talking with Ngozi about like how we're putting together pieces. A lot of the times people cut off North Africa and say it's part of the Middle East, but for us excavating in there and putting in North African artists was very important to us.
And Ngozi, you're the artistic director, right?
I'm the artistic director with Mfaniso.
Okay,
yes.
so what's your role? What are you doing exactly?
I mean, I think we sort of bounce ideas off of each other a lot. We call each other very late night and go, is this okay? That's a lot of it. But as a theater artist and as a writer and as an actor myself, it's about us talking about what we're interested in and what we don't see and what we feel like is a lack. And so she'll propose an idea of this playwright, and I'll go, what about this playwright? You know, we'd argued about, do we include this playwright? Do we not include this playwright? And so for us, it's very much a beautiful, I think, tug of war where, you know, she's the creator and she has the inception of these ideas, but it's also about having like-minded but also different-minded individuals that we, you know, that we can sort of tug and argue and go, hold, can we debate why we're not using this person?
Yeah. But this is a 3-day film festival, right?
No, this is a play
festival.
This
Sorry,
is a
this is a 3-day festival.
This is a 3-day festival.
So what can people expect in the 3 days?
The first day, what happens is we start out with a dramatic reading of Binyavanga Wainaina's Granta piece, How to Write About Africa. And it is a satire, and it is mean, lethal. The way to write about Africa is make sure you have little children with Kwashkikor bellies and AK-47s.
Oh, wow.
Because that's the way we like to consume Africa. And so we're going to, actually Ngozi is directing that particular day, and we're going to read that piece, and then we're going to have a discussion with Professor Awam Ankpa from NYU about what are the implications of that piece. And then we're going to get into the questions of how we created this festival, why we created it, what we've run up against, where all the African plays are in America, why have they disappeared, into actually questioning ourselves. What is our gaze?
Yeah. Something that we're also really proud of the festival is that, 70% of our actors, maybe 80.
Maybe more.
Maybe 80% of our actors, we're using up 40 plus people are, you know, African-born or first-generation Africans.
Wow.
And that was also important to us about their visibility. But I think what you can expect is really to see, I mean, diversity is like the big word right now, but that the true diversity of the continent. But that's not it. We literally just like scraped the surface.
Yeah, I think we read 150 plays. Oh, wow. When we first started without NYU, this would have been extraordinarily difficult.
I was going to ask about NYU. How did you get them involved in this?
Well, we discussed what some of the issues were, that we were having a hard time getting our hands on plays, that
That's right.
We want to do this thing, there's a concept here, but every time I go to the library to get out the play, it's either not there, or if I'm at the Schomburg, I can only read, I have to sit there and read it, I can't check it out. And so NYU opened up their libraries.
Wow.
And we're like, we really believe in you, we are going to help sponsor you. So
did they cover this in terms of funding?
In terms of space and primary resources, and then all sorts of little ancillary things along the way that we needed.
You know, press. They've been really fantastic with that. I think that's a lot of it, with access to the academics that are our speakers.
Yes.
They've helped with that. As far as funding, we did crowdfunding for it.
Oh, wow,
and that's actually how we've funded the majority of the festival.
Where can people go? What are the days? Let people know how they can see this.
September 26th through the 28th. There are different venues on NYU. You can find us on Facebook, and that will give you the breakdown of day 1, day 2, day 3, so that you know exactly what you're going into.
Well, thank you so much, Mfaniso and Ngozi, for being on the show.
Thank you for having us.
And best of luck.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That's our show this week. Thanks for staying tuned. Till next time, be independent-minded.